here today, and I'm thinking that this will be a really great, informative session where, it's part one of part two, so you can get, really deep dive into fundraising planning. For us in our strategic philanthropy department, sometimes we get so kind of caught up in the, grant making world, the grant side of things, but we recognize that grants are just one small piece to your whole funding portfolio. So this is a great opportunity where we can, get outside of grant making a little bit and talk about fundraising, because that is something that is, of course, I'm sure, top of mind to you all and important to us as well. So we'll go walk you through the agenda just briefly, covering the housekeeping items now, and then Laura and Krista will get into the fundraising planning presentation. We'll do some Q&A and then have a few announcements from our strategic philanthropy team. And then, continuing with the housekeeping items, we ask that you all keep your mics muted if you're not speaking. Post any questions you have in the chat box, and a recording of the webinar and presentation will be emailed out to everyone that's registered, and it will also be posted on our sanmanuelcares.org website on the resources page. So if you haven't had an opportunity to check out our website yet, I encourage you to do so. There's lots of great information on there, including, of course, the resources page. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our presenters, Laura and Krista.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Heidi. As Heidi said, I'm Krista Ortega. I'm the programs manager here at Candid. We're a national organization. I'm going to tell you all about it in a little bit. And I'm joined by my fabulous colleague, Laura. Here we are. Welcome. Feel free to turn your cameras on if you're feeling comfortable and in the mood today. It's fun for us to see you and see your reactions to what we're about to present, but also no worries if you're not in the mood, as we said. We are going to start with a fun poll. We wanted to get to know a little bit about where everyone is today mood-wise. So Laura's going to drop a link into the chat, or you can also scan that code at the top and drop in either in your phone or through an app, that kind of 806550 number. So there's a couple different ways you can access this poll on Slido. And what we want to know is, in one word, how you would describe your current mood today. So you should be able to access it on your computer through that link, or multiple ways from this screen mode. I see it's working for some. Hopeful is a wonderful way to start the day. Thank you for sharing. Energized, good to hear. Frazzled, completely fair. That's what we want to know. Sleepy, I might be able to relate to that. Optimistic, I love this. We've got overwhelmed, that's real. I'm sure you're not alone. Inquisitive, energized is growing, so that means several folks are writing energized. I love that. We'll give it another second or two. We've only got 7 of you chiming in, so take your time and have a little fun with our check-in mood. It's completely anonymous. We just want to know where folks are at and how they're feeling today. Excited is growing, energized is growing. We also got fantastic, engaged, and busy. Sounds like the nonprofit sector, right, Laura?
Yeah, it sure does. I love that most people are busy, excited, and energized. Yay.
Yay. It's real. Wow. Yeah, it just grew. We're with our peers today. We had a check-in earlier today, and I think we can totally feel your vibe. Did I miss any? Tired, fantastic, thankful. I love that.
And engaged.
Love it. Okay, should we give another second or two? How many do we have on total today?
Let's see. I'm not sure.
Okay. Think everyone got a chance?
Yeah.
Everyone got a chance to go? Well, wonderful. I just wanted to make sure everyone's there. This is, under caffeinated, I saw come in. I think I might be too. But yes, it looks like we're all energized, excited, busy, and engaged. That's a wonderful way to kick off our day. We like to know where folks are so that we can really guide our presentation to support you where you are. There's a lot of things happening around us, not only just work-wise and what our responsibilities are to our work and families, but also in our communities and in the greater world. There's things that we could be tuning into on the news every second of the day that could stress us out or keep us roped in. So I just wanted to thank you all for spending this time with us. I hope and believe that this 90 minutes is going to be valuable for not only you to just take a mind break away from work if you are feeling busy or frazzled, but also to stay engaged with your colleagues. Please use that chat to stay engaged with each other. And our goal is to leave you with some good action items to take back to work so that you did use your time away from us and your work wisely. So a couple of things about Candid. Just so you know, if you haven't heard of us, that's on us. We're doing a better job of letting everyone know who we are, but we're essentially a brand new organization. Foundation Center and GuideStar are two organizations that merged. We're about 2 years old, and while we're a new organization, we bring over 88 years of combined experience with millions of data points to help you do your work. And we do that because millions of nonprofits just like you spend trillions of dollars around the world. And what we do is we find out where that money comes from, where it goes, and most importantly, why it matters. And how we do that is with work just like we're doing today. We get a chance to partner with your organizations and share more information. So thank you so much for having us, Heidi and team. We also have research and other trainings and collaboration points. We're going to share some great resources from our website that are all free with you today. But if you have any other questions about Candid and the resources that we have available, don't hesitate to reach out to us. It is important that we share with you our response to all of these global events. This has been a year and then some for many of us. And so it was really important for Candid, as stressed out as we were in the middle of a pandemic as a nonprofit, struggling with very similar things that you all might be, that we were being responsive and providing more tools. So we pivoted everything online, which makes us be able to do this with you today from our homes. And we also have pop-up pages that we're updating. Our data team is updating regularly on the coronavirus resources, lots of grant opportunities, more information on funding, articles on how folks are doing their work in this new normal, as we would say. And similarly, we have a pop-up page for racial equity that I don't even know if we can call a pop-up page anymore. It feels like it's a regular part of our strategy and that these updates aren't going anywhere. So this is updated daily, if not hourly. So if you've heard about these pages with us before, bookmark them and go check them out every once in a while. New articles and new resources posted every day. And I think Laura dropped all of that in the chat that I saw. So thank you so much, Laura, for sharing that. As I shared, our job is to make sure that we leave you with some learning outcomes. And so this is a two-part workshop. As Heidi said, we're excited to be able to spend a little more time diving deeper into some of these learning objectives. So by the end of next week's session, which I hope you all can join us, these are your learning outcomes. You're going to be able to explain the basic steps for developing a fundraising plan, identify your organization's assets, develop a case statement and how to do that, set your fundraising goals, and next week we're going to dive even deeper into drafting a fundraising plan. So Laura, before we get too deep into what is a fundraising plan, can we do a quick pulse check in the chat and see, or maybe even with thumbs up and emojis on, I'd love to know, do you have a fundraising plan currently that you're operating off of? Are you still working on yours? How should we do this, Laura? Thumbs up if you have a fundraising plan.
Yeah, give us a quick thumbs up if you have one. I'm scanning through. We have a few people who do.
Good.
A couple tentatives. Not everyone is on video, so feel free to put in the chat yes or no, or maybe, or working on it.
And I see some thumbs up, not actual thumbs, but emoji thumbs coming in too.
Yeah.
So that's a great way.
People saying working on it in the chat. So I think we have somewhere between starting a fundraising plan and not quite started yet to, yes, I have one, but I'm still here. I could use a little bit of help building it out.
Great. Great. So thank you for that. Good. I can see some of them coming in. This is actually really cool how some of the pop-up apps are coming in, but thank you, Laura, for sharing. Please continue to bring your comments or notes into chat so it stays engaging. Laura's going to mostly be in that space because I've got the slides going here. I agree with you, Laura. I think while some of this may feel a little introductory for some of you, please tune in and listen, because I think there's opportunities if you are either planning for next year or starting to think of planning for next year to think about. Or the beautiful thing about a plan is you want to revisit it on a regular basis and kind of see how it's working and see how it can either improve or be tweaked for your work. This is, I would say, one of the most uncertain years I've ever had in my fundraising, nonprofit career. It is completely unclear what happened last year. We're starting to get early reports on like how fundraising went last year, but it's going to take a few more months for all of those returns for, the successes of last year went, to know even how to plan ahead to say, did fundraising work last year? And what does that mean for our planning ahead? So we know that we're operating in a really uncertain time, and a plan is one of the most important things that you can have in an uncertain time. And yet, if we're all busy and overwhelmed and frazzled like some of us are feeling, it's hard to actually build in that planning time. So let's just talk about the basics for a second. What is a fundraising plan? It's a living document that lays out really the specific tasks and, most importantly, those strategies. Tasks might be defined as you kind of go through the year, but the strategies on how to complete your plan, and the important pieces are having who's responsible for it, and most importantly, the time frame that you need to accomplish it. This plan is critical, and it really does look like a lot of different plans. We'll give you some samples over the next week or so with our second piece, but I've seen so many plans that really fit more of the vibe of the organization. So there's not one right or wrong plan, but it needs these certain elements, okay? Most importantly, a successful fundraising plan helps an organization be proactive versus reactive. And again, now that we know that we've been through such a hard year, you might even want to retool your regular plan if you haven't already, because of the uncertain time we're in. And a lot of times we have these crisis situations. We'll get to it in a little bit, but we have some organizations we work with in San Francisco that we know are losing a really important regular funder with the city of San Francisco. The city used to be great funders, and they're having a tough year because they've had a lot going on. So it's an example of why you might be in a crisis moving forward, and the plan is something that helps you solve that crisis with everyone in your organization. It's kind of like a communication tool. And most importantly, a roadmap, okay? A lot of folks are like, oh my God, crazy year. We have so much to do. How do we do it? That's a really important part of a fundraising plan, and getting everyone on board with, including the board, with where the organization is headed. So why is a fundraising plan important? And I think, I think I have this as a fun Slido, Laura. Give me 1 second. Let me find it. Is this my next one? Yes. So Laura's going to drop that link in. Same thing. Why is a fundraising plan important?
It just takes a second to load, Krista.
Totally. Can you see the Slido? Great. I might have given some ideas away. You're welcome to repeat mine. No wrong answers here. You might even answer, why do you have a fundraising plan at your organization? If it's more comfortable to put it in the chat, you can put it in the chat as well. All right, it targets funding sources that align to our strategic goals. Yes, a roadmap, 100%. knows what funds will come in and where the gaps are. I love that. Yes. Now you're like, we're not sure we're going to have enough, so we need to do something about that, either get new funding or have the conversation internally on, are we sure we can do all of that? Keeps us focused, love it, provides a roadmap for the whole team to follow. Absolutely. Any other thoughts on maybe why it's important to your organization? Gives you direction on which way you're going to set the goals. Yes. Shows funders that we're thinking strategically. I love that. Sustainability came in strong right there. Yes, sustainability helps us build capacity. You may even have funders that are interested in knowing a little bit about your fundraising plan.
Oops.
Provides and supports diverse. Oh, did I hear you, Laura?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've been putting the chat responses into Slido, so they're all in one place. But I just added a question. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Provides and supports diversified funding to be sustainable, and no worries. Yes. What is the question? I think Heidi said that you'll get the recording afterwards. Let's go ahead and answer it now. And so therefore, yes, you can share it with your CEO. Really important to have that conversation back and forth with your leadership. So I love it. Thank you for getting us all in the same place. Because again, when we know that some folks are tired or frazzled or energized, it's also like, wait, what are we talking about today? That is exactly not only why it's important to have a fundraising plan, but it should be a really living, breathing document, I think is the other thing that I wanted to enunciate here in the beginning. A lot of folks will write something and then it'll like sit in a file, or that old school idea of like you put it on the shelf and you never see it again. If you haven't seen your fundraising plan in the last few weeks, first homework, go check in on it, okay? Because a lot of times we can get so busy and just doing things that I loved using a fundraising plan because it would help me prioritize when things were busy. Laura and I know we've got some big stuff coming our way this year at our job. And we're like, that sounds really fun, but we have to focus on this first before we, for example, volunteer to help out with a conference, okay? So it really helps us make decisions on a weekly basis and sometimes a daily basis. So there are 6 steps for developing your fundraising plan. You are probably already doing some of this, but it's really nice to have a framework, especially when you're talking to your CEO and your board. And today we're going to cover the first 3 steps. So we're going to go through identifying your assets. We're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to develop a case statement, and you probably already have one of those. So this will give you some good framework to go back and revisit it. And we're going to talk about setting goals today. And then next week, we're encouraging you to come back because we're actually going to create an action plan. We're going to talk about implementing your plan, which you're doing now. But most importantly, we're going to talk a little bit about how to evaluate the plan. And same thing, you don't want to wait till the end of your plan to be evaluating it. So how do you build some of these things in on a regular basis to really use your plan like a live plan? Heidi, I love that you talked about this in the beginning because we have these great pie charts that just kind of gets us in the same space around another reason why it's so important to have a fundraising plan. And just take a quiet minute, because I know you're going to get tired of my voice. That's why we have Laura here. And just look at this pie chart for a little bit. Take a minute. This is our a source that we just got last year around where nonprofit revenue comes from around the country. Hopefully what you're seeing here is that big pie on the left-hand side that says 70% in red, or the darker color, is program services and fees. So this is not every organization, but we know that this is, kind of the average from all organizations. The program services and fee for service cover a lot of nonprofit revenue. And over there in the middle size box, the 23%, are contributions, okay? So this is going to be your foundation grants. This is going to be your individual funding from individuals. This is going to be actually the majority of what we're talking about when we're talking about a fundraising plan, okay? Those philanthropic dollars. You might have other sources of revenue which make up 7%, That's really going to vary depending on your program. Obviously, all of this is going to vary depending on your mission and your program. But I think of that, for example, when I think of like a museum that has a coffee shop out front. That, you know, there's other sources of revenue, or a gift shop that, you know, you can bring other sources of revenue in, but that's not necessarily part of the museum program. Okay, so that's not for everyone, but if there's an opportunity to have some additional revenue, why not? And that's what a lot of organizations are thinking about and looking at, is to diversify. So we're going to zoom in today and talk about the contributions, but the good news is just contributions aren't the only part that are sustaining your organization. So obviously we need a plan for everything. Here's the 2019 data on the philanthropic revenue, that contributions side. And actually this report, the Giving USA Foundation report, is a proprietary report that you traditionally have to pay for. But we've got a partnership with you folks. So when these new numbers come out in June this year, you'll get them all through us. So make sure you tune into our next workshops. And I think that's going to be great timing, because we do have a June workshop where we can launch these new numbers. So the big part of this pilot,
it'll be interesting. Sorry to jump in. It'll be interesting to see how this year did fare, and you know what will happen with things like corporate contributions. Will they have gone up, or foundations? I have a feeling that individuals will be the one area that's going to be higher than past years.
Yeah. There are some early reports, but it's not the full study that these folks do, that are saying, Laura, that the individual donations and actually smaller donations have gone up since 2019. But you can understand why it takes a while to close the year and then get this data and then actually write the report. So I think it is going to be interesting. We'd love to know that corporation dollars went up. And, you know, this is really the philanthropic side. I know corporations and big, you know, companies, big businesses in your communities are giving in different ways from different pockets, including volunteer time and something like this. But we're talking specifically about philanthropic dollars. You can see that individuals are the biggest part of the pie. Okay. So something to just keep in mind while we had this conversation before we got on with you. While some organizations are different and your slice of the pie might be all of, you know, your 70% is coming from foundations. We'd like to give you this context because the big picture on how much foundations give every year in like where the capacity is much lower than what actually individuals are giving. So it's something to just think about as you're developing your plan, and we're going to dive into looking at your assets. If you're not taking advantage of this $309 billion from individuals in this country, it might be a good time to start thinking about that right?
Yeah, and just to add to that individuals tend to give more over time, more so than foundations, and they tend to be more stable over time as well. Individuals are likely to keep giving year after year, whereas foundations sometimes will make you take a year off, or maybe their missions change, or they have different priorities for funding. So that's another reason to really look at individuals in your fundraising plan.
Exactly. And I want to also note, thank you, Laura, that individuals are you and I. Okay. It is some extra wealthy folks that don't have to work like we all do today. But it's also you and I. And I think this also gets skewed sometimes when we kind of, you know, brush over individuals as a general sense. We think of that like, you know, rich white old man. And we want to really make sure that we're not creating any additional internal biases to think about who the individuals are that might want to fund our organization. It's not about meeting someone that you don't know. It's actually about, we're going to dive into assets right now. I'm like getting ahead of myself, but really looking at the assets of your own organization and leveraging strategies to fit the folks that you already know. Okay.
Yeah, I was like Krista, right before this call, I'm on the board of a nonprofit theater organization, and our average gift is $30, but we have hundreds of people who give just $30, and it makes a huge difference. And over time, they'll give more, and as their income grows, hopefully they'll give more as well.
Totally. Yep. It's just an important piece to think about. Yeah, I love the thumbs up that I can see them. So let's dive into this assets. What are your current organizational assets? Use the chat and share what that might be. What makes an organization strong? It can be your organization or any organization that you admire. What are some things that say, wow, that organization, that's a strength?
People are thinking, Krista.
I don't blame them. We already did the mood check. I'm moving slow because I'm already thinking too. I see mission coming in. Yes.
High service capacity versus demand.
Yes.
Passionate volunteers, indeed.
Love that one.
That's a great asset, of course.
I think we forget that sometimes. Don't forget. That's so important to highlight. Was there another one?
Mission, which is great. If you love your mission and you're behind it, that's exactly where you should be starting. Brand recognition and reputation. Diversity, great. Personalized education, wow. Positive community perception. Impact, our workforce/employees, great.
Yes.
Experience, yeah, those are wonderful.
Love it. 100%. I love that someone said employees as well. So important to tell the story of your employees. It's a huge part of how you do your work. So I think you guys got most of these. Here are some other examples. Community, I just saw come in. Thank you, Anne. Compelling mission, large public base of support. So going back to those pie charts, right? Maybe it's not one funder giving you 70%. Maybe it's a bunch of funders that add up to 70%. That I gave myself goosebumps. That to me is, we're passionate over here. We're also a little tired, but that's okay. That sometimes says to me, wow, not only is this one group or person or foundation interested, but there's a lot. Name recognition, you guys nailed it. Well-connected staff and board, right? So not only the story and the bios and the experience that the staff and board have, which is important to highlight. You can understand why even grant applications ask for that, because it says a lot about who says yes to being a part of your organization, but also their connections. Okay, this isn't like the old school Rolodex thing. This is like, that board member not only is, the member of this organization, but they are very involved in their community. They organize this fundraiser every year. Those folks that have those kind of like connections with the community. That means a lot when someone says their name, beyond just their bio, right? A great facility, that might be a huge asset and strength that your organization has. A high traffic website. I think you all nailed some of the other things that we haven't even thought of. Did I miss anything in the chat, Laura?
Yeah, we have diversity and engagement. So that goes back to your mission. Safe place for community to meet. You have a great facility. Awesome. Great board leadership and staff team to reach and expand goals. So great connected staff and board. And a unique service in our area for what we do. And that also goes back to your mission.
Love this. I'm going to take a pause here and say, you guys have so many great examples that the more you can take notes for yourself too, you're telling us, but if you have a moment to like grab a blank word sheet, or, I'm a notepad, Post-its gal myself, to write some of these things down as they're emerging for you too, because you might already be talking about this, but this might help as you're kind of pulling together some new ideas for how to look at your plan. Okay, so don't forget to take your own notes. The other thing that helps you identify your assets is we recommend using a SWOT analysis. If you've heard or used a SWOT analysis, give us a thumbs up while I go through it. It's such a great tool. Yeah, I see some thumbs up coming in. Excellent. SWOT's great. It's simple. You could also do, obviously, an in-depth needs assessment, feasibility studies. You can always get deeper into really understanding assets. But the other thing about a SWOT is you can do it quickly, and/or this is a great activity to do with your team. So I encourage you, as we're doing activities with you, to also think, is this something I should do with my development team as an activity? Is this something that I can bring back to a board meeting and have this conversation with them? the more you get folks to be thinking about the work as you're designing your plan, the better they are to, get as engaged. So the SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, as all of you that give us the thumbs up know. And it's an important thing I use this on a regular basis, just when I'm trying to think ahead and understand. I use this for event planning. Like, you can use it for your whole organization, or you can use it for a very specific strategy. Oh my gosh, we had a gala in the past, and now we're not sure if we're going to do this fundraising gala. Or let's look at a SWOT for our board and see what our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are with our current leadership. Okay, so you can use it in a lot of different methods. If you've used it before and want to share how you've used it, go ahead and drop that in the chat. I think the other thing that it helps you really find it when we're relating it to funding is, I think someone said this earlier, your gaps, where you might need additional support, and or where your organization might have some gaps, maybe because of the pandemic. Let me give you an example. Your internet or your IT or your kind of ability to do things online wasn't as up to speed. And that could be either a threat or a weakness. And yet that could be an opportunity to get a new grant or get some additional funding to be able to be like, in order to do our work, we need to really up this area of expertise. We might even need to hire someone new. So it's another reason why a SWOT is a great tool when we're thinking about assets. Did we see some examples come in, Laura?
One person just said they used a SWOT in a different organization, but not in this one. So it's time to bring that out. Oh, that was you, Alberta?
You want to share, Alberto?
Yeah, I was just going to say good morning, everyone. Just wanted to share, when we talk about the SWOT, I think it's also important to do a SWOT, when you evaluate your human capital, right, or your workforce, your organizational structure. That's another great asset. Your finances, right? I think that's a given, but also your organizational culture and mission, just seeing, what are the pros and cons, right? What's good? What do we need to refine? But I think, those four elements are key.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And it really can be a simple exercise that you do to get your mind thinking on a small team, or, like Alberto said, I recommend building it into how you do your development planning, and how you check in on your development plan as well. Oops, I skipped ahead.
Oh, Susan said that she used a SWOT during their strategic planning process. That's a great idea.
Oh, love it. Excellent. And like I said, if you have the ability to bring in someone external and dive in, awesome. But sometimes we can use these kind of external consultant tools to solve some internal problems for us as well. So before I do move on, because we're talking about a lot, go ahead and take a moment, find your notepad or wherever it is that you're comfortable taking notes, and list one thing for each of the SWOT right now related to your fundraising. Like I said, we know that the fundraising could be your board is a great connected organization, but let's think about it from the fundraising lens. What's one strength, one weakness, one opportunity, and one threat for your organization and your fundraising plan today? So go ahead and take a few quiet minutes. I'm making the activity broad so you can use it however it works best for you and how you are showing up today. One strength, one weakness, one opportunity, one threat. If you want to do more, go for it. Yes, I was just going to say, after you've written it, if you want to drop it in the chat to share with your peers, feel free. I see Pat wrote strengths, loyal financial supporters. What a great strength to have at this time. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing, folks. Lisa's sharing that one of their strengths is they have a team that works hard for success. Wow, that's a huge strength.
You can't buy that.
No, that's special. Congratulations on that. You don't have to share, but it's important that you take some quiet time to really think about some threats and opportunities. Those are going to be more external to your organization. And boy, do we all have those these days.
I can also share an example too when we're ready.
Yeah, I think we're there. I just wanted to give everyone some quiet time to kind of think about it too. Go ahead, Laura, share, please.
Yeah, I was just thinking the first time I did a SWOT exercise was my organization, a nonprofit theater, was figuring out what our marketing plan would be. We were small and mighty and nobody really knew about us yet. And the nice thing is our strength was our product. People would come to our theater and love the work that they saw on the stage. The weakness was no one had ever heard of us or knew about us or could find us on a map. So the opportunity was, there was so much opportunity because whatever we would do in a marketing plan would increase our visibility. So we felt like that was a huge opportunity that had not been tapped before. We'd never had a marketing plan or a marketing staff. We were able to hire one person. And then the threat was really just, there's just so much competition for people's time. You know, everyone's vying for everyone's attention, especially in entertainment. So that was always, you know, how do we set ourselves apart from that? And what other competition do we have? So I hope that helps.
Great example. Great example. And like, this is just, even doing it now, it never gets old. So if you've done it once, do it again. Where it's like, it's a new month. There are new things happening all around us. And I do think the most important thing that we can do at this time is work really hard to be nimble. There might be something that comes up, you know, kind of last minute that's a really great opportunity for you as an organization. But if it wasn't in your existing plan, you kind of have to go back to the drawing table and go, let's just make sure before we say yes, that we have the capacity to do this, and or is this in line with our strategic visions before we get too excited. So
I love what Stephanie said, which brings up a good point. She says their strength is effective and unique services that people want to give to once they understand what it is, but that's also their weakness. And that's so true. It's two sides of the same coin a lot of times. So it can be both a strength and a weakness.
Such a great point, Stephanie. Thanks for sharing that. It's true. We can go, I mean, I even think about Krista Berry Ortega's strengths. And that if I go overboard with them, they're not necessarily as sustainable. So another reason to get more folks involved in doing an activity like this on a regular basis at a staff meeting to see where everyone else is. So that then you can go, you know what, we all actually had this as a common denominator. This is something that we can work on. I've also done strengths with my team. We talked about team as an asset, where I realized that I've had teams in the past that were extra stressed out. And that wasn't helping everyone. They were always, sometimes were frazzled, but they were always frazzled. They were always stretched thin. So that helped me in kind of figuring out where they were, how to reprioritize, which is really necessary in the work that we do, because we can always say more and yes to more. But really it's about choosing the things to put the most energy on that, you know, it's about return, but also it's about meeting the goals. Okay. Anything else I need to know in the chat? Thank you all for sharing. This is amazing.
That's great. We've had a lot of people share, so that's great. Everyone's thinking about their SWOT at this point. Wonderful.
Fabulous. So let's go ahead and talk about a case statement. And Laura, I'm going to give the context and I'm going to lean on you to share some examples and maybe some other tidbits on this topic. Developing a case statement obviously is part of the plan. So the question is, what does your organization, this is how, what you want to think about, what does your organization need and merit the support? We all know that, nonprofits need it, right? That's just saying that you're a 501c3 and we do good work, unfortunately isn't enough, because whether we like the word competition or not, it's true. There are a lot of organizations out there. I actually think in the state of California, the last time I checked, it was like 181,000. I mean, within your region, there's several thousand, if not more. There's a lot of organizations doing really great work. So a case statement, what it does is it really makes sure that you have a written document outlining your general argument or case for why your organization develops that support. Common case statements for small to medium-sized organizations are about 5 to 10 pages long. These, unfortunately aren't short documents, and they can take some time to put together. Maybe some thumbs up if you have a current case statement. I'd love to know. Give us a thumbs up if you have a current case statement. A thumbs down is fair. It's okay. It takes, like I said, it takes a while to get a good case statement. A couple of thumbs down. Okay, good. I wanted to check in and make sure that we're not kind of over accentuating something, because if you do have a case statement, hopefully it's been revised, right? I've seen some of these proposals and things come in that it hasn't talked about how you're doing work after COVID. And everyone wants to know that. I'm actually volunteering with an organization in my community right now, and they want to raise a bunch of money for a capital project, and yet they're still not really clear in a written document like this how they're doing their work in the middle of a pandemic with a social distance reality. So it makes it hard for others to get on board, because we're not sure what's actually going on right now. We know what they did before. So this is a really important thing to make sure, and if you didn't have one, but if you do, to revisit at this time of in the kind of organization's life cycle. Preparing your organization's case statement, it's also an opportunity to collect that important data. Data is important. I would say stories are just as important as data. We interviewed a funder on Friday with another group in San Francisco, and she really reminded us how important stories are to funders. So I'm great that I can share that with you in real time. But data supports stories as well, okay? So it allows you to demonstrate your competencies, your past successes, your accomplishments, how effective you are at your work, which again makes your case stronger. And it's another communications tool as well. Think about how important a case for support would be in recruiting new board members and making sure that staff are all on the same page in terms of the program that you're doing, or your amazing volunteers. It gets everyone on the same page, and then ultimately it does make writing proposals, any press releases, any other documents, like this organization that I'm helping launch a capital campaign. It makes all of those things much easier to turn around, because you pull it from your regularly updated case statement. Anything to add, Laura?
Yeah, I was just, the only thing I would add is it's definitely a document that everyone is involved in. It's not something you write in a vacuum, because you have to include past financials, a little bit of history, maybe some quotes from people who've used your services. It really is sort of the document that if somebody came in and knew nothing about your organization and that case statement was sitting on the table, they could read through it and understand who you are, what you do, who you serve. So it's the best way I have found is to really involve everyone, dedicate a whole staff meeting to updating the case statement after COVID, as Krista said. That's so important. What has changed? Everyone wants to know. Funders will want to know. Donors will want to know. So it's something that you can do as a team, and as well as with the board. The board needs to be on top of what is your case statement, so that when someone asks them, what does your organization do, or who are your typical clients, then they have that case statement to refer to.
I think that's a great point. They don't necessarily have to be the ones that are drafting the detail, but they should regularly use it as something to be able to have at the top of their heads. Yeah.
And I love what you said about it's a great resource for things like press releases, or for grant writing. it's, you know, enormously important because you're actually taking information from your case statement to use in your proposal. So it's definitely not a waste of time to have a well-written, well-documented, updated case statement.
And I've seen these situations, they're happening all around us, where all of a sudden someone will be like, do you know someone that does this? I've got a funder for you. And sometimes you don't have the time to, you know, ideally you should, but sometimes you don't have the time to craft a very specific custom proposal for them. But a case statement is a great document that is not like a grant proposal in the sense that it's your organization. So you can share it or share pieces of it as broadly as you want because it's talking about your organization versus, you know, a grant proposal should be really written to the person that it's going to. So I love that Lisa asked if we have a sample of case statements. Yes. Oh, did you already drop it in there? Laura's got several.
So I did find a few, but I dropped in, we have an article in Candid Learning about what is a case statement, and it's got some websites. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, we have a lot of resources on it. But actually, case statements oftentimes are either on an organization's website, but they're usually an internal document, but I was able to find Habitat for Humanity has a case statement that they actually post right on their website that you can find. Now, keep in mind,
Wow.
put the link in, but keep in mind that it's fancy. Habitat for Humanity is a very large, well-funded organization. So their case statement is full of graphics and it's beautiful to look at, but it also includes tons of statistics, their history, what they've been able to accomplish. It doesn't hurt that they have an ex-president on their board, but at the same time, what I'm trying to say is it's, I think, 16 pages long, but most of that really is graphics and charts. If you take a closer look to what they're actually saying, that's the case statement. But then I have another example for you that's more short and sweet. It's actually for a capital campaign for a school that doesn't have any tuition for its students. So I'll put that in. You just have to scroll down, but it's also a great article on what you need to include in your case statement. But if you just wanted to scroll down to number 4, they have a couple of actual examples, and they're not the 5 to 10 pages. I would I would build it out further, but it's a great place to start.
Excellent. I tried to share a little bit about how we have a lot of these pages that I was sharing on our website, where it has almost like a little mini article. If you're like, I know Krista and Laura said something about case statement, but what were the elements of it? So bookmark those links. They're free. You can access them anytime. And that's where it starts linking other examples too, if you ever want to, you know, share that page with others as well. Okay, so we shared all of the case statements, right, Laura?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions about case statements, folks, or what we've covered so far? I would say too, we've seen this before, Laura, because we teach how to write proposals a lot, that sometimes if you don't have a full case statement, actually getting prepared for a grant is a great way to start. So it might go the other way. We'd prefer, in like the perfect world, which none of us are in right now, to have your case statement ready. But if I'm thinking of you, and I've worked for these organizations, the majority of my career has been for small organizations where I had to create a lot of this stuff while I was there. Maybe go, if you don't have one, go to your most recent or strongest grant application. And you could start it from there, right? Because you've already put some written language together where you might want to just put it in a more generic place. This is also really good if you are going to have any staff transitions or shifts, to make sure that you're, just kind of documenting these important written pieces for your organization and making them really accessible to anyone. I love doing that, as Laura knows. Laura and I both love processes, not because it's our natural strength, but because when we take time off, we like to unplug. So if that's what motivates you, great. I've had to learn to be a little more detail oriented, because I don't want someone to have a deadline when I'm out and it be a mad scramble, or for whatever reason, someone can't jump in and see what I'm working on in the moment. So thinking about where these documents live, where your grant documents live, so that anyone can really pull these at any time if there are last minute scenarios. It happens. You never know. So here are some of the other components that we already talked about: mission and values, programs and services. I'm going to say accomplishments, accomplishments, accomplishments. We actually recently did a report or a study, and we found that, you know, accomplishments are one of the most important factors for any donor to give an organization money. And if you're a new organization, you can talk about the leadership accomplishments. It should be the organization, but you can also talk about leadership's accomplishments, because that gives you cred. Plans for your future. I love this one. So not only how have you pivoted through COVID, but like, what's the future looking like for you now? What gets you excited? Is it always, we can't wait to get back to what it was before? It's not as exciting to me as, you know, COVID's been hard, but what we've done is retooled, I'll tell you ours, how we deliver things online. We were not set up to do something like this before COVID. And I'm so grateful that COVID pushed this for Candid, because now we're more accessible, and we're probably never going to stop doing this type of learning, because we've learned how to do that literally overnight. So plans for the future are more blended, you know, blended learning opportunities, even if folks are feeling safe to come back to the office. And Laura, you hit on it, the budget needs or any other financials. It tells a different story. You don't have to be an accountant or a CPA or a financial whiz to tell an important story on the financials of your organization, which also makes the case for why you need more money. Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, under Krista mentioned accomplishments, obviously, and if you're a new organization, you don't have that many, let's say, under your belt just yet, but aside from the accomplishments that either you or the volunteers that you work with have had, but also who else have you worked with? What are your collaborations, and how has that helped with your work? So, you know, you don't always have to use your own example if you're working with others. That goes a long way as well.
Love that. I want to give a few quiet minutes before we move on, because we are kind of going through a lot and we're basically building the components of the plan. So take a few quiet minutes, whether you have your case statement written or not. What are some components, either from this list or ones that Laura talked about in the samples, that you know are going to be top priority for you and your organization to write sooner than later about your organization? What are pieces that either need to be updated or some of this content that needs to be drafted? Okay, take a few quiet minutes, try to get 1 to 2 examples of some components that you need to draft. Okay, anyone care to share in the chat what you're like, oh my gosh, we really need to get drafting this, or let's dig around and see what we can find in some other docs to pull this together with an updated version.
So Stephanie says we have an executive summary / annual report that serves as a wonderful case statement. It's filled with infographics, statistics, future plans, and accomplishments. Recently, it includes how we pivoted by developing new programs specific to COVID. We could all learn a few lessons from Stephanie.
Gorge, Stephanie. I want to see it, actually. If it's electronic, feel free to drop the link in the chat. It's a great way to use the annual report as an opportunity to really push some of this written document. Thank you for bringing that up, Stephanie.
And actually that example I showed for Habitat for Humanity, I think that is very much what looks like an annual report to me.
Yep. Yep. I remember when annual reports were printed, and right. And I think there's some reasons why they should be these days. But I pivoted our annual report years ago to be an electronic document. It didn't necessarily, it saved us on printing, obviously, but it was heavy on design, electronic design, which is so important. So not only is the written case important, but I think also to really be thinking through how you're making it visual as well, which is, I think, what an annual report does a good job of that, making sure that there are pictures in there that really show high impact. There might be a picture of the person that you're telling the testimonial quote from. It just really, visualizes, if you've got that beautiful facility, it really visualizes the words as well. So great example for the annual report. Did anyone else share? Great.
So oh, sorry. Stephanie says, I'm so old, LOL. So I love the annual report and come from advertising. So the design and readability is important. I'm with you. I don't think you have to come from advertising. I think anybody who's busy and wants to be able to look at something that's visually pleasing, but at the same time delivers a lot of information would be all for it.
I agree. And this is where we go back to our assets. Board members are always wanting to know how to continue to get engaged. Again, they're not necessarily your copywriters, but they are definitely folks that would love to review a draft and offer feedback on it, because you want to make sure that it's something, like Laura said, that's accessible for all folks to read, that it's using language that's not too jargony, that any funder would want to read and go, oh, okay, I see where they're going with this. That's an important element. So having other folks and thinking about how you engage other folks to even get involved in reading drafts and giving you feedback is really important. You might even find an in-kind graphic designer when you're getting other folks involved in a nice document like this. Okay. Wonderful. We've got it. Hopefully you've got your list that helps you prioritize the important pieces of your case statement. And kind of another little piece of homework, go back to your organization over the next week and look at what you've got written, okay? You might even start a folder, an electronic folder, where you're like, this might have a piece of a case statement, or this might be something good for a future annual report, and just pulling some language together into one doc so that if you are in a situation where you need to flesh out some of these components quickly, you'll have them ready to go. Okay, and maybe even creating a goal that if you don't have a written case statement, you have one by June or the end of the calendar year. So let's talk a little bit about setting your goals. Step 3, okay, in the component 2, I love this graphic, but I am going to move faces over it so I can see where you all are. It's important before you can craft your plan, really to know kind of where you need to go, to be super clear where you are today. So starting where you are is obvious, I would say, and yet not always something that I see practiced. It's so easy to sit in a room and go, you know what we need? Millions. We could use some millions. Candid's a big organization, and yet because we're big, we could use some millions too, okay? But that's not necessarily specific. We could all use millions. We could all want Mark Zuckerberg to be our best friend and write us a big check, okay? So it's really important to get more clear and detailed about where you are so that you can create goals that are realistic for your organization. So some important questions to ask. Who are your current funding partners? And what are they giving? Who are your largest funders? How much is that? I love the numbers with it too, okay? Helps us figure out what our goals can be. Where could you strengthen your funding base? We've already talked about those diversified pie charts, but you might already know one funder might not be there in a few months. We know people that are in that situation. Revenue might be down, whatever that might be. Where could you strengthen your funding base? When you start to put especially the numbers to the answers to these questions, it also helps you really understand a realistic projection of what you could do more. Of course, we all want to be like, and let's raise that 20%. I mean, how many board meetings have you been in, Laura, where it's like, and we want you to raise that 20%, Krista. And I'm like, that's not realistic. Like, of course, that's what we want, but that's not necessarily realistic. So this piece of the plan helps you, the fundraiser, the staff person, really dive into where you are and where you've been, looking at the history of who these current funding partners are, who your larger funding partners are, and seeing if there is some realistic opportunities of increasing that, or, you know, kind of looking at the not so good news of these might actually decrease, or we might lose some totally. So I would even,
where you can ask for help as well from your board or from anyone who's giving you these great suggestions, you know, turn it back around. Well, who do you know? Or do you have any ideas for who we can go for, you know, get an introduction, etc.
yes, it's the stuff that you want to bring, whether you're some of us as fundraisers aren't board facing, but you can see how embedded the board is in the work that Laura and I do all the time, because like in the work that you do, because the board is important to it, but you might not be board facing. So this is also important planning work that should not, again, sit on the shelf and, you know, wait till the end of the year, but should be regularly, I would say monthly. I was used to, as a fundraiser, doing monthly reports, so that it wasn't like, oh, bummer, I have to do a monthly report for the board, but more like, I need to know on a monthly basis how things are going. And we'll talk a little bit more about evaluation next week, but still, this is where it fits, because that gives you an opportunity to say, you know, we actually might have a challenge coming up, and I'm letting you know as well in advance as we can. And that's where they can also be a great resource for you. So doing that work ahead of time and not waiting for the board to kind of ask you or make these sweeping, you know, crisis goals on, you know, no, time to raise everything 25%. It's like, that's probably not likely. So I would recommend for homework here, and we're going to give you an activity to work on right now, but looking back over the last few years, because it's hard, our trends aren't as stable as we kind of shared at the top because of this kind of uncertain time that we're operating in. And so it's good to see, do you have a funder that was funding you in other difficult, challenging financial times? Or did they drop off in the past, maybe even before your time working at the organization, or gathering some more historical knowledge for funders in these categories for your organization from other folks that have either worked or volunteered there, just to give you a better sense of making some projections and feeling confident in you know, what those projections might look like when it comes down to the dollars that your plan's gonna ultimately total. Laura, we've got that fabulous handout, right? And let's see if I can, oopsies, Krista, where's the stop share button? I want to see if I can show you all. Please see if you can open the activity handout first. And I'm also going to do the same thing. And then I'm going to try to, when I click out of the webinar, sometimes it gives me a pop-up from WebEx.
I recommend
starting opening a new page. Okay.
It takes a minute to load, so be patient. You'll see a gray screen for about 30 seconds.
All right. So it took me a minute to load. Here's the handout. We want this to be as practical for you as possible, because if we just keep going, you're going to have all this information and not have necessarily taken the time to think through how that works for you. So this is assessing your fundraising strategies. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this today. You're going to have a chance to work on it over the next week. And this is how we're going to start next week. Because again, it's important to know where you are now in order to create and set those goals. So what this what this worksheet does, it's a little hard because you can't write on it. So find wherever your notes are, and you can follow along and take notes on this. But essentially, it's going through the different sources of revenue on the left here. And then you're assessing your chances of support. Okay, so individuals is the category. It's a little general. You can drill down even deeper in your numbers if you want, but you're assessing your chances of support for new donors. Hopefully, like many organizations, you got some new donors in 2020 and maybe even the beginning of 2021. So hopefully your plan, if you have one, and if not, it should include a strategy for how you're going to continue to have those new donors come back. So you want to kind of assess your chance of support. Renewing donors, upgrading donors. And then if you want, once you kind of look into your detail, you could also guess here what that goal might be. And most importantly, some strategies and action steps for that category. We've got a category foundations. We've got a category for businesses and corporations. We've got a category for government grants and contracts. And then I think we also have federated fundraising organizations. If you don't know what that is, then you don't have it probably. And then of course, earned income. You can always look at earned income if that fits your organization. So you may not have revenue in each one of these categories. And like I said, you can rename the kind of details underneath each category to fit your organization, but we want to give you some quiet time to at least go through one or two of the categories and really assess your chances of support from the information that you know right now. Okay, we know that you're going to go and do your homework and dive deeper and have a better data focused answer in a week, but right now, very good, possible, unlikely, or unknown for at least two sources of revenue for your organization. I was having the same challenge. Whoever talked about the document, I recommend going to the internet browser, opening a new window and pasting the link. Try that and see if that works.
And worst case, we will be sending this out, so you can always, you'll be able to use it on your own.
And or that's why I'm projecting it. If you just want to find a place to take notes and write individuals and then decide next to it. Is it very good? Is it possible? Is it unlikely? Is it unknown? And your unknowns are going to be telling. There's nothing wrong with an unknown. That's going to help you prioritize what to do when you leave this webinar today. Give you another minute. Try to answer it for at least two different revenue categories. Okay, no worries, Lisa. We'll make sure that you get the handout, okay? Okay, whether you were able to get into the document or not, feel free to share if you had a funding source that was anywhere on the scale. Was it needs more information? Was it very likely? Share at least one example of how you might score one source of revenue. Share it in the chat. Everyone's still working on it. So what we'll do is we'll make sure to get you the handout, and homework is to spend a little more time. It doesn't even have to be on that handout. You could create your own list of the different funding sources that you have, and really understanding, again, where you are today. How likely do you think these folks are going to, come back, or do you need more information on knowing that? That's very telling if you're not sure if they're going to give you money. That really helps with figuring out what the strategy would be for your fundraising plan.
We do have a few folks that chimed in. LaDonna says expanding our donor search with FDO, the Foundation Directory Online. We love to hear that, right, Krista?
We love to hear that.
And then Pat says renewing donors is likely, but the rest is unknown. So some work to be done there.
Yep. Just helps. It goes back to the SWOT and kind of understanding where you are today to make really good, smart, kind of, data or relationship driven goals. All right. I could tell you as a fundraiser in the past that, these folks would fund me every year at this amount because I was able to, even if I wasn't at that organization, look back for the last 5 to 10 years. And then I could add the piece around, I have a relationship with them. I know things are a little more difficult for them financially. So I'm going to set a goal that they're going to decrease their gift either by a percentage or an actual dollar amount because of the past giving history and the relationship that I have knowing about them today. And then that helps me set more clear, realistic goals based on my actual funders. Okay, really important for this step in the fundraising plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about a few other elements of the plan, but we'll get you that document, and most importantly, spend some time before you come back next week having a clearer sense. And it's okay if it's still unknown next week, because that means you still have some more work to do in that area. But we're going to start there in diving into actually what your action plan is going to look like with that information from your assets. Okay. Creating stability. I just like to, reiterate this in a different way. We showed you those pie charts, but stability in your organization, especially in such uncertain times right now, can really look like this, visual of different streams coming into one big river, if you will, in this example. So if you've heard anything about, it's important that you have diversified revenue streams, hopefully this also visualizes that for you in addition to our other pie charts. You want foundation money, you want those government fundings, you want your business development streams, but if one of these categories, like an individual donor, is something that you don't necessarily do or you don't have in your development plan or you don't have a strategy ready to go, that might be a huge opportunity. Back to your SWOT. Wow, we've got grants and business corporations locked in, but we've got some supporters that sent us a few random gifts last year because they liked our work, and we've not really done anything with that. We don't have a quote unquote individual donor program. And that might be something that you want to spend a little more time on in your asset sheet over the next week, and start thinking about some strategies for what that might look like. And some other questions to keep in mind, and yes, don't worry, you're going to get this deck, but is for creating stability is which funders could provide you with the most long-term security is something to think about. And kind of, back to our conversation earlier, Laura, that's, I think, when, if it's not individuals and you have a foundation that is going to fund you in perpetuity because of the relationship and the alignment, then that's long-term security. Good for you. Maybe you don't need your pie chart to be 70% individuals because you got that foundation money locked in. But if you're not sure that that foundation dollars is long-term security, especially in a challenging year like now, that's something to really think about now more than ever so that you can get ahead of that. I believe this is going to be a very, very, very difficult financial year. And I'm already seeing signs that it is for many organizations. Which additional funders or streams, back to our little visual, might you be able to add to your funding mix? Okay, so my example of the day is if you have a board that's mostly giving money through their job, either their foundation, their corporation, they might have a match, find out if they're giving on an individual basis too. Now, we're not talking about if their corporation can give you $10,000, we're not talking about, can you also give me $10,000? That would be dope. But those aren't the numbers that are necessarily realistic in your fundraising plan. But maybe you have an initiative where you start and you ask all board to give a meaningful gift and you give a suggestion of a minimum of 100 to a maximum of 5,000, kind of assessing what you know about them and their giving. I would start with board as an opportunity to really think about other funding streams for organizations that are, or for individuals that are as close to your organization as possible. It's hard to ask other folks that are new to an organization to give more if the ones that are closest to your organization haven't done that first. So, and finally, how much time and money will it take to secure these additional funding partners? This is critical to sustainability because I can tell you, I've been in a couple of crisis situations over the last few weeks through volunteer work or through hearing about scenarios of organizations that we work for. And if there's a financial challenge right now that can't get figured out in a few months, some major decisions have to be made. So being very realistic. Laura, what's the timeline for like getting a grant today and getting the money in the bank, or applying for a grant today and getting money in the bank?
It's about 6 to 9 months, or sometimes up to a year. So it takes a while.
So if you're thinking, oh, this grant that I'm writing right now is the organization's solution to meet the goals by June, you might want to go back to the drawing board and have a different sense. So that's why your plan needs to have these timeframes and not wishful timeframes. And actually, sometimes I do this for board. I'll do a column of like Krista's realistic timeline. And wouldn't that be a cute wish list that we get the money tomorrow? That an angel donor calls tomorrow and solves all the problems. But we really want to be realistic here, folks, because this is how we make priority decisions. And this is how we make really important, frankly, cases for support to ask people to give. We had an opera house in San Diego, if you know the story, years ago, that they were really struggling. The dollars weren't coming in for the shows anymore, and they were struggling, and they survived, which no one thought they were. We were like, they're done, canceled, no more. They survived because they went to their most critical, long-term, secure donors and said, we need your help now more than ever. And folks moved things around and gave them a bunch of kind of cushion money because they believed in them, and they were able to take that and kind of reposition and rethink how they were doing their work, and they survived. That's a special situation, but they knew how to make the case. Okay. So look, if it's not dire straits for you, awesome. I'm just being real because I'm seeing after a first quarter of a challenging year that the stability is going to be even more important. You might have some big successes in new ways that you're fundraising. And we've heard a lot of those great stories as well. Okay, before we move on to GuideStar, was there anything that came in the chat or any kind of stability questions or conversations or stories?
Nope.
Okay, so I've got one more poll. And I can't find it. Hold on. We're going to talk a little bit about GuideStar as a tool for your fundraising plan. But first, I need to figure out how to launch this. Here we go. First, hopefully you have that link there, Laura. We want to know, have you seen your nonprofit's GuideStar profile? ever, or at least in the last few months. And it's okay if you don't even know what the GuideStar profile is. This kind of gives us a moment to check in and see where you all are at. Have you seen your nonprofit's GuideStar profile? Yay. Looks like we got some yeses coming in.
Oh, good. And someone
And
said they
edited
edited
it.
it. That's great.
Bam. Okay, good. Something told me that that was the case. So
And
we're
a
going to
few
cruise.
no's and a few, what is it?
That's perfect. I'm going to give you a high level, what is it? And then it's really just a reminder how important your GuideStar profile could be in your strategy for some of your revenue streams and your plan, okay? So quick, their nonprofit profile on GuideStar, it goes beyond the IRS data, which is important for a lot of funders and individuals. As you know, if you're raising money from individuals, they're gonna want this information eventually. And because everything's online, it's important that you're aware that they're finding it on their own now. I think I saw a note from Heidi about GuideStar too. We always look at the GuideStar profile when we're reviewing a funding application. Good to know, Heidi.
A lot of foundations do. I would say they all do, but
Yep. And like I said, individuals like you and me are doing Google searches right now to find, I Google searched an organization before I got involved in volunteering with them. And their GuideStar profile came up and it looks like they had never claimed it. And I said, well, they need my help. Yes, I will continue to volunteer. But this is important. They're looking at you, whether you know them or not. So there's more insights beyond the IRS data. Millions of nonprofits are on there. So it becomes almost like a virtual shopping experience, if you will, for folks that are looking to get involved with organizations. And the best part, in my opinion, is that information on the GuideStar profile is coming from you. You're the expert, back to the case statement, on talking about your work. So this is another application for where you can take your case and put it somewhere beyond just a written document visually for folks to find. And so a lot of the sections in the GuideStar profile, you might actually be able to pull straight from your case statement. We just launched the new 2021 seals. Every year you have the ability to add more awesome information and stories about your organization and get a new seal, which I'm seeing more and more folks are really into. And you can also tout that seal on your website, adds trust. I will add that this gold star seal in the middle here has an element that we just added. When you add your leadership demographics for board and staff, it helps you get the gold seal. And what an important thing to be telling right now, especially if you are BIPOC led, to really, that's part of your accomplishments or that's part of your story. And funders are asking for that information now more than ever. And we have to say, well, all the information we have on that is what they put on their GuideStar profile. So find these opportunities to not just get the seal for the seal, but get the seal because you're telling the story that makes you so unique. This is the study that I referred to. We just found out recently that organizations are getting more contributions, 53% more with the seal than organizations without the seal, which is good news. And there are just so many benefits. It makes the case for your funding work, obviously. It increases that online identity that you were all talking about that's important to your plan. Your visibility, we've got funding partners that are connected to your GuideStar profiles. It saves you time back to making this your annual update and then putting it in your case for support and putting it in your proposals. Obviously, it demonstrates your transparency and telling your information and sharing it to anyone that wants to see it. And I think this is important. It shows your progress and results so that you can help combat that overhead myth. The reality is your staff that are delivering your mission are overhead, but also they are the impact. So the more you can say about the progress that you have and the work that you do, the better you're able to get that overhead myth gone.
And Heidi
got so many.
that Heidi says we just added an application question regarding leadership demographics.
Yay, Heidi.
Yay.
Fab. So our hope would be that you all are so good at filling out your profiles all the time that we can have folks like Heidi use the GuideStar profile as a common application. That's some of the work that we're doing with foundations, but we know that we can't do that until, you continue to tell the important information that they're looking for in one place. So the more folks that can fill that out and use it like Heidi and team are using it, we're hoping that the more we can save you time, and the funders will have their time saved too. I'm going to skim through this. There's so many partners that have opportunity for funding, but the most important thing, if you haven't done this yet, is it's super easy and it's 100% free. Okay, so this is no cost to you. This is a free resource. We benefit when you tell more information about your organizations, because we can tell more funders and organizations to look at your profiles. We can help attract more people to your profile as well. I'm not going to go through the details here. They just have all these awesome, pretty slides for us to share with you. And you'll get this as a handout, so you can dive a little deeper. If you do have any questions about your GuideStar profile, we've got a whole help team. You can always ask Laura and I, but we have folks literally are sitting by the phone that can answer all of your questions, either electronically or on chat. And we also have a bunch of free trainings that are available to help you specifically walk through some of these details. But I think if I were you, I'd make sure your GuideStar profile as an activity and a strategy goes into your development plan for all types of revenue, if not as kind of like a general part of your plan and readiness before you are going to go and ask. It's a really important step. Okay. I got to stop. Next week, we're going to cover, look at what we got through today. We're going to dive into that action plan. So bring your asset beats. Okay. Do the activity, dive in a little more, ask some questions. We're going to talk about implementing your plan, which some of you are already doing, and how to improve that. And then most importantly, evaluate it. Okay. We did it.
We did
Any
it.
questions?
Left. Is Candid responsible for GuideStar? Yes, we are. When Candid and when Foundation Center and GuideStar merged, we became Candid. So yes, we are all under the same umbrella of Candid. Yes, and we will definitely be sending all this information, including all the links I've been posting. Great, we're getting some thank yous. That's always nice.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
And, if we're going to see you next week, you could also put in the chat, okay, cool, learn that, but here's what I'd also love to learn or spend some time on next week. So please feel free to send that in the chat right now, or email Laura or I. Laura, can we drop our emails in there?
Yeah.
And if you have something that you're burning to want to talk about on this topic next week, we can build that in.
And then before you all head out, we just had a couple announcements that we wanted to share with you all. So, reiterating that the recording and presentation, and the resources will all be emailed out to you. They'll also be placed on our Salmon Well Cares website, so you can check that. Look out for it there as well. In case you lose the email in your inbox or something, there's always that website to go to. The survey is automatically emailed out to you all through SurveyMonkey, so please take the time and complete the survey. We really value your feedback and try to incorporate it into our future webinars. We look forward to seeing you all next week for part 2 of the two-part series, Fundraising Planning with Candid. And Candid Krista and Laura will be back in June for another webinar, but in between then, we do have a panel discussion on May 12th, COVID-19 a year later, challenges, accomplishments, and a look ahead. So you can mark your calendars for that one, and look forward to having a good discussion around, some of the challenges and accomplishments that nonprofits are facing as a result of COVID. And then, reminder, I made a couple plugs, a couple hints with our application site, but our grant cycle is currently open, and it's open until April 30th, 2021. So you can find the application link on our San Manuel Cares website. So when you look at our recording of the webinar, hop on over to the next page and start filling out your application cycle. And then just to remind you all that, you know, we remain cautiously optimistic about the COVID-19 pandemic and our ability to provide grants in 2021. But, you know, this is definitely a competitive process and we're not able to support all of the grant requests that are submitted. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and that's it.
Heidi, can I share one brief announcement, if that's okay? You know, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name's Alberto Hasso. I'm the manager of strategic philanthropy for the tribe. I just wanted to kind of echo some of the announcements that Heidi shared. You know, we highly encourage you all to complete the surveys and give us some honest feedback, because we're really trying to find ways to provide the resources that you need to better serve your folks, and to really kind of prepare you to work with other funders and to continue the work with us. You know, the tribe is really making an investment in the community to, you know, really provide these opportunities through our friends at Candid. So, you know, we really appreciate your guys' time. And also too, you know, again, with the survey, you know, just let us know. We're really trying to mold a lot of these sessions around what your needs are. And we read each and every one of the surveys and the great compliments that you guys all provide. But we want to make sure that we're providing the resources that you guys need, you know, to deal with the rapid changing times. So thank you all for joining. And that's all I have. Thank you.
See you all next week.
Thank you.